certainly wanted to spend just a little bit of time with you, uh, just kind of chattering with you, simply because about like what we have been doing prior to our sitting down here, and impressing upon your minds how important it is, the step that you're doing right now. We asked the next, let's say about 2 weeks ago, maybe not that far long ago, but we asked the next level how we could assist you all in getting thoughts into the atmosphere or into the ether, whatever we want to call it. And they said that we could write some things, maybe, and if we wanted to.
Meaning Tiendo.
Tiendo could write something like some kind of little paper trying to entice individuals to seek something better than what they have, that we could do it. And so we sat down and wrote a few things, and we thought, well, maybe we'll run an ad in the paper. You know, we like to run ads in the paper. And so we tried to figure out how to word something that would sound different than what other people have already put in the paper, you know, about space beings from space are here to help you and so on. And so we never could come up with anything that sounded different. So the other day, in my meditation, I asked the next level, what can we say that would be different than what other people say? So the answer I got was, say the ABCs. Yeah, how many times have we told you that all you have to do is...
That if you were really thinking, when we were sitting and talking to you, if we had something to say to you and you were really seeking, we could say the ABCs and you'd get it.
So we worked out a message, and we used the ABCs for the message.
In other words, we wrote out a message, and then we decoded it in the ABCs. You know, in other words, we started with caps and periods and punctuation and number of letters and words and all, but just using the ABCs, and so that our message had the same number of letters and words and of the same size and length as the ABCs. See what we're saying?
So we said, and then we said for free translation, write to. Of course, we kind of felt like that was a joke, but anyway, we spent some time playing around with it. But the thought that came into our mind was that perhaps just our thinking those things was all that really needed to have happen.
Because we thought long and hard on what we could say in a nutshell that would have any significance in relation to what we've talked to you about the beginning of the New Age and the uplifting of people's conduct and thinking activities. And the lower forces have seen to it that organizations and groups and all have said everything you can say in every way you can say it, even though it means to them one thing, and if we should say it, it would mean to us something else, even though it would be the same words. And so there's nothing that we could say that doesn't sound like, looking for the new dawning of the Aquarian age, or all the same gibberish that you see all the time, that efforts are trying to promote their ideas. But we did think long and hard, and we did come up with saying it in a nutshell, even though we knew that to humans it wouldn't say at all what it meant to us. But the fact that we did come up with something that meant to us what we felt was the potent potency of this period in time, then, like T said, maybe the fact that we did work on it long enough to get it down to a few sentences, that effort might have made a contribution in the air for this garden. Just like we told those who were present earlier while some were consuming, that your meetings make a very, very good contribution in thoughts for the garden. Now, we came to Amarillo on a couple of other things we had to do. And we thought, while we were here, we had to come over to the house and see the class. But we, like T said, we didn't really have anything super duper to deliver to you. We wish we did. We wish we could say at 8 p.m. tonight that out in the backyard you can, get on board.
Well, we have had some ideas of how they'd pick us up. Oh, I don't think I'll talk about that awful. Well, you want to hear about it? I don't know if I'm sending my thoughts out or if it's wishful thinking or what. But it would be very simple. The clouds can be used, as you know, in the Bible. Even the clouds were used as a
cover.
And radar picks up clouds.
In other words, clouds just show as a blob. They wouldn't be able to tell what it was. It might mean that a craft might have to move in the pattern of weather.
Or they can make their own clouds.
Or make their own weather.
Yeah.
But like what he's saying is there would be no noticing. We can see how clearly they could come even in a neighborhood, even though it isn't too congested. But let's say something like the retreat, it would be very easy to.
Well, they could come here.
And they could come right here.
I mean, they could encircle you with a cloud, and very
or
easy
this
you all
whole
out.
area, and everybody would think all there is a little rainstorm.
Just a heavy fog. We passed early this
yeah.
morning. We passed before daybreak. No, it was right after sunrise. We
Between
passed
Clayton,
a heavy fog.
Between Clayton and
it blocked out
Raton.
the sun. It was so strong.
For I guess 30 minutes driving between Raton and Clayton, we were in such a dense fog, and the sun was out very, very bright, but it was just as dark in there as it could be, and it was just a dense fog, just sitting there, not very high above the surface, and something like that would be very, very easy.
Very easy for them to do.
Technically, I'm sure it would be easy.
So if you all find a cloud out around your place, get your books.
Yeah.
All the stack to them.
Tie your shoestrings and be ready. Pull the Velcro over.
It would be very easy for them to pick you up, because that's been one of our worries, or mine. I don't know about those being separate like this. So I feel like that's the most we've ever gotten on our leaving. Here are some questions that were sent up to the retreat by the ones who are up there now or on their way back. Is there a concise update with regard to how humans should treat this planet? To the commandment in Genesis which says, "Be fruitful and multiply and subdue the earth."
You want me to answer that?
Mm-hmm.
That subject wouldn't be appropriate in your book. You don't need to cover that in your book, because there's no way you could cover it without it upsetting apple carts and not being able to understand. What you're talking about is what you have experienced. You're not preaching sermons, and you're talking about what you have overcome and what you've had to experience and what you know. And you are saying that those who seek the kingdom of heaven would, of necessity, have to know the same things and have the same conduct. it's just the rules of the game. And that's the way you're approaching it. But you don't need to go back and explain or discount or update things that certain religious people in society would quote from to defend their position. Like people say, well, what would the world be like if everybody stopped populating? It wouldn't. There wouldn't be any more people, and you'd say, "Great." That means that all of them would take vehicles they would all get vehicles about those who deserve to have vehicles would get vehicles about the last time someone gave in to sensuality would be when the last person needed to get a vehicle, and then they would all have the opportunity, if they surely chose for right reasons not to populate. Goodness, that would soar the planet up so fast, that would be fantastic.
You've got to remember that we're trying to uplift the people and bring them up to a higher level of existence. In other words, this new age that we were telling you about was to teach the humans a new way of life, not to continue in the way of life that they have been living for ever since the beginning.
And that doesn't mean you're telling them to switch over from one extreme to the other. You're not trying to promote that they immediately jump into your type of life. You're trying to promote kindness and cooperation and negotiation and better conduct toward each other and all the things that you all have to learn of necessity that it takes in order for forward motion. And you're throwing in addition to that, even the particulars about the areas of conduct that you have had to change in order to do what you choose to do. Do you see what we're saying? But I wanted to let you know, or be sure that you knew, that he was talking about it's the more basic things that, believe it or not, are more important for them to begin with. Because if they really choose to do the more basic right things, then they've taken the big step toward a direction that will lead them to more thorough steps. Do you understand that? In other words, you wouldn't do anything except turn them off and totally confuse them. Not that your books are doing this, but if you went out and said, now all of you got to stop doing all this tomorrow. You got to stop having any sex. You got to stop doing all these things that you are doing. That would just, they wouldn't even. It's just like they read even those things now as they read the Gospels, and they don't know what to do with it. So what do? They turn to the Pauline epistles because they can handle that. In other words, they can take what Paul told them to do because they can apply it to their daily lives, even though it was wrong. You see? But you've got to have intermediate steps. You've got to, even though you are exposing to them what you have chosen to do, and you're even letting them know that you understand that what you've chosen to do is the only way that you can ultimately please the kingdom of heaven and ever hope to be a permanent resident. Do you see the picture? But you don't. T has helped me understand that you have to take people through steps that they can handle. Now, it's because of who you were and where you came from that when we were used as the magnet to get you together to do the task you were called upon to do, that you had to do an accelerated task of just cutting and severing roots and conduct just with a sickle, and then starting an extreme about face. But that doesn't mean that John Q. Public out there could do that or would do that, because that's not where they are. It does mean that they would ultimately have to come to that conduct. But don't forget the pace of the New Age. It's not a fast one. We wish it were, but that's not the way the garden grows. You can stand over a new flower and wish it would grow, and wish it would grow. And if you wish hard enough, it'll die, and instead of grow. And if you recognize the fact that the New Age was begun when the information that Jesus and his disciples and the gospel writers deposited, that was the last New Age, and it was years after. Now, whether it will or not be the same thing this time, who knows, but it's likely that it would be years. And it took a long time for it to get hold, catch on. Don't forget that it took many years for the masses of people to just get past the point of thinking that here was someone who deserved to be hung on a cross, because the masses felt that he did. It was the tiny few that felt otherwise, and they even felt that way toward his disciples, and they all got themselves martyred. So don't forget, it was the generation that sprung up after they were dead that began to say, goodness, this is what we were looking for. And the people who brought it got murdered in the process. Can you see that? And it was because of that their task was designed that way, the drama of the crucifixion and the fact that they got martyred in that way, that it left the impact. Now, you're going to leave an impact in a different nature. We don't know what nature is going to cause it to be that much impact, but we're sure that the next level has a drama all prepared that will cause the impact. So that the thoughts that you have deposited in the little books and whatever methods are being set up will cause the same attention to be precipitated after your departure. Now, if we may be wrong, their signals, we don't know all their signals. We don't know all the things that are going on in the wings that might cause the drama to be different. There might be certain aspects of it that would happen prior to your departure. We don't know, and we can't second guess. But what we're saying is that the normal procedure for for it to take hold is one that takes hold gradually, and usually takes hold. It's like, don't you know today that someone can be alive and nobody even liked them, like Harry Truman, and the moment he's dead, then they start liking him, and 10 years later he was super duper.
One of the best presidents we've had.
And that's the way society is. When they start looking at what they said and did after the fact, they see the things they couldn't see or couldn't even stand when it was happening. And that's the way it works. Well, don't ask that question collectively. If Steele Lodi asks that question, then it's okay. But we don't want everybody to try to put that down.
If it works out.
Yes, if it fits in with what you're doing and you want to do it, okay, but it's certainly not something that we're saying try to put in your book.
Another answer to this question, what was printed in Genesis doesn't necessarily apply today.
Yeah. See, that was a couple of ages ago, and that was when the civilization was extremely young. They were so primitive, they were sleeping with animals. And they were marrying their brothers and sisters and just had zero order to their lives. And what was appropriate for the next level to lift them up was with their New Age information in the early books of the Old Testament was order, self-control, some discipline, so that their lives weren't just total chaos. They didn't even know how to bury their going to the BC in the campgrounds. And, you know, it was like there was no control of disease or anything. And so you've got to remember that the material in that part, like in the Old Testament, was applicable to a very primitive aspect of, or period in civilization, in this particular civilization. And then what Jesus and the writings that were brought there, that was a real shot upward. And this is a real shot upward. But if you can see them in proper perspective, they fit so well as three phases for upward motion. But don't forget, they also come at a time when it seems like everything, the next level strategy is to bring it in when they're thirsty, when the plants are thirsty, when they think everything is rotten. And something has got to happen. The second coming to the Christians, the Messiah to the Jews, whom they're still looking for, the answer to our environmental questions for the environmentalists, you know, the economists. They're all looking for the same thing. Some of them call it in religious terminology, some call it in political or economic terminology. They're all looking to get out of the hideous direction they're going in for some way out. And so it's like, hello, the next level says, you got a little help, a little information for you that'll help you go in a new direction and go up lots of stratas in the right direction.
Did you have a question?
When the writings that were left at Jesus, the time of Jesus, were pretty specific. At least Jesus was saying were specific as far as what you have to overcome, and that was left, if I remember correctly, that was left for the people at that time that couldn't really leave the planet, but it was to shoot them up with. Is that right? I mean,
well,
how to
it was an introduction to the ideas, even though at this point it was primarily applying to the immediate students that he was dealing with. But they were used to plant these thoughts and these actions and to try to bring them up. And did it work? It's worldwide now, even though a couple thousand years later, it's all been distorted, and people are using it to make money and build colleges in Tulsa. You know,
would we be able to say? Would it be appropriate to say at this time, things they would? This is a time for them to overcome much of the negative things of humanness. But could we say that to prepare yourselves to have members of the next level walk among you, rather than say to leave the planet or just not touch on that at all? I haven't said anything about people leaving. They're leaving. What you're
trying to do with your books, and what the New Age will do for the humans, is to give them a new way of thinking, so to speak. In other words, children nowadays have no respect for their parents. In fact, they have very little respect for anyone. Teachers, what is it that they used to respect mostly? Preachers, teachers, nurses, doctors, parents, and so on. They don't have that kind of respect. They've lost it all. And the forces of, the forces of this garden have made the people believe that you should all love one another. Get in close so you can hurt each other. Because love hurts. There's no way that any human can love somebody and without hurting them. Because when you love something, if somebody does something that you think isn't right, then you are hurt. And therefore, no one is ever going to do everything exactly the way you want it, so therefore you go around hurt all the time. Right? And this is what all these Space Brothers and this Brad Steiger thing that he was into, this Francine, his wife, space children.
Yeah.
They all teach to love and all that, and to
be close to
all that gooey stuff. And what we want you all to do is to let them know that that's weakness. You care about somebody, and you respect them, and you are considerate of them. You are kind to them. And that is the different way of love. We were talking earlier. I don't know if any of you are old enough, maybe Press Odie, to when this vehicle was a child, my parents did not have to say to me, "I love you." I knew that they cared about me because what they did for me. And it wasn't until your generation came along where the Dr. Spock and all of these started saying, tell your children you love them all the time, make them feel secure, spoil them, And
and yet they showed just the opposite. They were busy telling you how much they loved you, and yet their actions showed just the opposite.
They didn't show it. They didn't prove to you, and therefore the maybe you all didn't, but the children missed out on something. And in other words, Doe said his parent told him, you never love somebody. You love God, but you don't love somebody. You might like them.
That's right. In our household, the word love was not applicable to anyone but God when I was growing up. And if we said we love so-and-so, or we love this food, or we love that, we were immediately corrected and said, you don't love anything but God. You don't love anyone but God. You can like those things. You can like those people. But love was a word reserved. And you see what T is pointing out here, how much that has deteriorated.
Now, people used to not believe that you prayed for material things. Now, Oral Roberts and all of these have led you to believe that God gave you all these things, made them plentiful, so why not pray for them?
He did.
If somebody else is going to get them, why don't you?
The wrong
get
God.
Care of them.
The wrong God.
And it's the wrong God. Now, this was one of the things that we wrote a paper on, that we put it into the ether. We don't think we'll ever do anything with it, but and that is the paper, if I can remember it correctly, said don't ever ask God for something. God knows what you need better than you know yourself. If you work very hard to please God, then He in turn will give to you what you need.
Maybe
so
not what you want, but
that's
what
right.
you need.
Never worry about it. Now, this goes back to your out-of-craft task. I think some of you brought that up with one individual who was concerned about pleasing a manager or something. And some of you came up with the right answer. If you concentrate on doing a good job, according to a procedure, they can't help, your manager or your customers can't help but be happy with what you're doing. But if you are there to make yourself be liked, then you're going backward.
Or to please them in a human way, rather than to do a good job and do it as a young student at the next level would do it.
You do it because you want to please that individual. You never do it because you want to make some money. You never have the money before your eyes. You do it because you have this customer here.
For but she was saying,
but the thing of it is, you never think of yourself. Never. And this is what we put in the book. In that paper. You never put yourself first. You always put the person you are in contact with first. What are their concerns? If you are working in the lab with two, if Song Odi and Still Odi are working together in the lab, and if Song Odi is concerned about working as a good partner with Still Odi, and Still Odi is concerned about being a good partner for Song Odi, there's no conflict there. You can't help but if you are thinking about how you feel as an individual, because Song Odi or Still Odi makes me nervous, or they're not thinking the way I think, or if that big eye gets in there, you can't help but have conflict. And these are the things we want you to put in your book. These kind of things, so that people will know how to handle it on a higher level. We had an incident where one individual, and he isn't here right now, but I don't think he would mind our mentioning it, where at work the menu, the copy of the daily menu had to be out by 11:30 or something like that, so that the customers, actually before then, so that they could take the menu and clip it onto the little printed menu, daily specials, I guess, print them onto the menu. And one day the girl who had charge of printing them up was running late. So this individual went into the office to get them. And she said they were not ready. So he left, came back later. She said they still were not ready. And so he came back, I think, another time. And finally she got angry with him and told him that she would get them to him when she got them ready, And it confused him. He didn't know how to handle that kind of circumstance. So let me ask you, how would one of you all have handled that circumstance? Can you all come up to a next level way of thinking of how to handle it?
Could you offer to help them get ready?
I doubt if they would do that. I don't think they would allow that. You think about that. Now, that girl is upset because she doesn't have it ready, and if you offer to help her, I don't know that a human would.
She'll be offended by it. Mm-hmm.
Right. How would you handle it, Sam Odi?
What you just said made me think it might not be right, but I've probably just tried to explain that, the time was...
This individual did too. Did say, well, it's 11:30 and customers are coming in. I told you I would have them ready in a little while, and I'll get them to you.
In other words, she knew that they were already tardy, and she had already, she didn't need to be reminded that they were tardy. But it's like, what could you do?
I guess I would say, I guess you must be doing the rest whenever you finish.
No, I'll tell you what a next level member would say. It'd say, may I see what's on the menu, so that when the customers come in, I can tell them what's on it until you get it ready. You see what I'm saying?
Then both are satisfied.
And you're not
Only
pressuring
saying,
her,
just what
but
can I
you're
take a
showing
look
an
at it?
effort that you're working with her. You see what I'm saying? Now, this is what, they don't know how to handle things like that. Humans don't know how to handle it. She could only handle it by yelling at that person and making him feel bad. Now,
And he was trying to do what he thought was right by
Right.
being conscientious on having it out front, and there just came conflict.
Could you all understand what we said, what I said about how it could have been handled? Now, if you all can do that in your book, you will give individuals an out. They don't know how to handle circumstances like that. All they know how to do is to yell at each other and to fuss and fight,
Compete.
to compete. And you all can take incidents that applied to you as individuals in the process of your going through this, getting in control of your vehicle, and put it down. There would be 36 examples of different things, because you all have been taught how to handle certain things, and taught the way members of the next level would handle it. Just like you talked about how you help each other in the Help Wanted meetings. You all handle it the way members of the next level would handle it. If you sat down and told a human some of those things, do you think that they would take it? They would get up and you talk about black eyes. You would all have a bunch of black eyes.
They would be offended before you got 2 words out.
So but what got you to this place where you could sit down and talk about it?
Yes, what did you have to go through? What transition did you have to go through to be able to do this and want help and want to make adjustments in your own vehicular habits and your own dealings with your booger?
Well, I can remember not very long ago that if somebody said something to somebody in this class, that individual would be very offended. You couldn't even talk to each other. You all remember that time?
That's why we feel so good about it.
And now, for you all to be able to express yourself as members of the next level shows that you are losing your humanness. You're thinking as members of the next level. And that's what it's almost like missions accomplished.
And we know that sometimes it still hurts. We know that your booger is still there fighting against you, but you have grown to the degree of having enough control that your mind is persisting on working this out in spite of what you're dealing with your booger. Now, and so it shows that you've passed the 50-50 mark in control. You're more like 60-40, or maybe even 65-35 at times, even though sometimes you probably think it slips back to 35-65. But, T was talking a moment ago about how people pray to God for material things and how it's the wrong God they're praying to, and he loves to be called God. Not one of his jackpots ever paid off with good money. Now just think about that. The bad money came out every time of his jackpots. In other words, every promise that your booger could make to you, he would not be able to satisfactorily carry out. Even when you were in the world, there is not even a human out there who, to the best of their ability, serves the lower forces that doesn't get paid with dirty money. Now, I don't mean that literally. I'm using that symbolically. Even when you're doing what the lower forces want you to do, it always backfires on you. His promises aren't worth a darn. And what he says that he will yield always has more ugliness than reward to nothing. No time can you serve him and come out on top. You might appear to come out on top, but it'll only be because you were determined to hang on at least to the appearance, because that's all you had. Do you understand what we're saying? Satan could never pay, could never keep a promise. He'll promise you anything to get you on his side, and he can't keep one of them. Not one of them.
Talking about, understanding about the condition that I found myself in a lot, like even at work, unions firm or something would say, I wanted this so much, and I put so much into it. Sometimes I even cheated a little bit to get. Now that I got it, I just don't want it.
There's nothing, they
That's right.
have absolutely
That's right.
nothing.
He thinks that, boy, this is what I want. Whether it's to be a millionaire or a star or famous or something else. And there's not one that's gotten any of those things that didn't take with it a bigger bag of trouble than the assets. It just, there's no good money in any jackpot with his name on it.
We heard on the radio today where in the Denver area they're having a new kind of counterfeit money coming out. They're taking $20 bills and pasting them on a $1 bill.
Taking the corners off of $20 bills and putting them on ones or something like that.
How are they doing
I don't know. It didn't make a bit of sense to
How
me.
could that be counterfeit?
But they said that Denver was being swamped with fake bills.
That was a joke.
I heard about that a couple of years ago. They cut the ends off.
Well,
What does
they
it
do?
read in the middle?
Well, the logic that the argument says that the person who's handling the money doesn't look at the middle.
He just looks at the corner.
Right. If you hand out a 10,
Oh, so it's $1 bills that says 20s on the corners?
and look at the corner.
Oh, I see. They take a 20 and paste it on a $1 bill.
Yes.
Corner of
They
a
get
20.
the 20 corners. Oh,
Huh?
they don't, that's right, they could just
You-
take
you
it off
can
of
take-
one corner.
Well, you can take 3 corners off and have one, I guess.
I didn't know.
Because I think legally the bank will make good on any bill that has more than half of it there. So in other words, you can cut one end off the bill and the bank will give
Well,
you
that's right. That's right.
the good part.
You can cut the corners off and it's still a good
You
bill.
have extra corners.
See, they're thinking of everything. It's time now. You all hurry up and write your book. What time do we have to start the next experiment or whatever? 5 o'clock? 5 o'clock? Okay, we'll have to hurry because it's 15 minutes.
Okay. Is there anything more on there?
Yes. Is it okay to include in our books that none of the mines who are products of this garden have yet entered the Nutrilab level through overcoming the concern? No, wait a minute. Through overcoming. The concern is that this might sound discouraging.
That's right. That's right. There would be no purpose. It would serve no useful purpose to say anything about that no offsprings of this garden have entered the kingdom of heaven. That would just be like thumbs down before they got started. Then why shall I try? If there haven't been.
That's like being one of the 144,000.
Yeah.
Well, if there's only 144,000, there's no sense in my trying.
You mean on all these billions on this globe?
Never
Have
would
you
it
not
be,
heard
though.
the people say that? And because some Christian will say, well, it's only going to be 144,000 lifted up. And say, well, I guess that means I can go and have all the fun I want to. There's no sense trying.
Next slide. Next question. Would it be appropriate to define the vibration of the planet, this planet, as being the geomagnetic force field? That is gravity force, that this tangible force, that this tangible force is what induces into human. Can you read that? The writing gets smaller. and
Would it be
smaller.
appropriate to define the vibration of this planet as being the geomagnetic force field, i.e. gravity force? That this tangible force is what induces into humans the characteristics of behavior they must overcome. Does this sound too technical? Answer, yes. Not only does it sound too technical, but it isn't accurate. Don't try to answer scientific formulas that you don't know what you're talking about, because we don't know. We know that we're incapable, as you are certainly incapable, of knowing accurate scientific explanations of characteristics or what makes behavior patterns. And you certainly couldn't reduce it to a gravity force field. That wouldn't make any sense. You could more honestly reduce it to the choices that units have made since the first unit was planted. In other words, do you understand that? Individuals, let's say that a few were planted and they chose to become rotten, their offspring chose to become more rotten, or maybe this little group of offspring chose to become more good. And in other words, they become a result of choices, plus they inherit vehicles that are a result of choices they make. So their vehicles can make things more and more difficult for them if they have vehicles that are a result of generations of poor choices. But you can't say that the gravity force really does anything more than keep your feet on the ground, to give you a mode of some order of getting around. We'd all be otherwise floating and bumping into each other. No kidding. It just don't try to be scientific. You have to go.
Be good.
Okay, be good. Promise?
We promise. Okay, Halani?
One of the guys had a second question. Was my understanding correct that it was possible that some who at least pursued this endeavor for a while had never been members of the next level and were just young minds and
Yes.
wanted to try and...
You're saying, is it possible that some who were in the class at certain stages that'd be very, very hard to understand.
Maybe Tia Doe.
Don't put that in your book.
By all means, don't put anything about Tia and Doe in your books, okay?
And what do you mean by that?
Well, writing about the two teachers or something, because we don't want any elevation afterward.
Well, it's the teachings that
Right.
we're interested in.
Next level teaching.
It doesn't mean that you can't say that you were taught that,
Go ahead.
but what T doesn't want is personal elevation.
Right.
We want the teachings of the next level elevated.
Y'all have to rewrite your book?
No, it wouldn't be wrong to explain that in the book, because the important thing is that people understand that it is next level way to feel that they, as an individual, get in the way of what their purpose is, and but there's no other way to deliver a purpose. But it's in a sense, Jesus' message, or when Jesus came, even though he would, because he was a member of the next level, would not have wanted elevation, and the opposite seemed to be happening, which ended him up on the cross. He also knew that the end result would be a task that would elevate him as a focal point of the information. But the important thing was not him, but the information. In fact, it was probably even hard for him to deal with understanding, they're going to put me on the pedestal. Sure enough, they do. They put him on the pedestal. And a lot of times they forget about what he had to say. They just think, well, since he's on the pedestal, if I bow to the pedestal enough, or count enough beads, that it'll all work out for me. And yet, if there had been a way to do it, but there wasn't, because the way humans are designed, they have to look to somebody, and the hope is that while they're looking to somebody, they'll pay attention to what they had to say. But go ahead.
I was just going to add to what you were saying, that it seems to me like if there would be a class or at a certain time that the humans have grown to be more refined and have more of the ways of the next level, like you were talking about already, it seems to me like there would be members of the next level to come down to help the humans through the process. In other words, you all, it's true you are members of the next level and you came down for another reason, probably to get you. There are many reasons why you all are here. To get the ones we are aware of, mostly we think would be for you all to get in control of the vehicle, and also to deposit this information into the atmosphere in order to bring the new age in, and leave this information for the humans to use, sort of, so they will know how to be lifted up to a higher way of thinking. And but it may be that this is also an experiment with the next level. Everything they do, I don't believe, is fully proven.
In other words, they don't know the end result of it.
They don't know that it would work out right, and they're always trying things. And so
to help the plants grow better.
And that's what makes it kind of exciting in the next level, because there's always something going on, you know, never a dull moment. And I believe that it makes sense to me that they would use this as an example, because if you all remember that the things that you have been taught, remember later on, we may drop it, procedure, and then later on you will have opportunity to use that procedure again. You remember, know what I'm talking about? And so all of this will be put in their computers. And let's say that this garden does respond to this. We know they will. There's no doubt that they will. It's just how much will they distort it?
Yes. How long will it take it to germinate? How much will they twist it around? How many doors did we leave open that we tried to shut to the lower forces from making something out of it that wasn't?
And the Lord might have to step in and just zap old Satan and put him on a mountaintop someplace and tell him to stay there for a while to let this germinate. We don't know exactly. This is only speculation in our mind. But the point I'm getting at is that you can say that teachers will come and help the individuals. But we don't want them to say T and Doe will come, because we will not come again.
You better not say that.
I don't think. I may be wrong.
I may be wrong, but I hope not. No.
But we're willing. I'll sit on the curb for a
Did I hear that thing click again?
But we don't want people any more than Jesus will come again. Nobody would even know Jesus if he came. You know. There's so many Jesuses that have appeared to people. It just.
Oh my goodness, yes.
And we don't want T and Does or Bowen people, whatever they want to call us, to take form.
Or to look for them.
Right. It just so.
But to look for the next level. You see, now I'll tell you something that has happened that's unique to yours. Well, that when Jesus and the information that he and his disciples left, it was unique, the fact that what they left had a awful lot more advanced information than what was given the time prior to that. Okay, what you're leaving has an awful lot more advanced information than what has been previously left. Now, if you want to look at it from what could the worst be and what could the best be as a result of this information that you're depositing, the worst could be that it didn't have much significant impact and the lower forces were capable of very quickly turning it into something else. The best that it could be would be that large bunches of people would take it so seriously that they would actually begin as individuals and as units to desire to practice what you have experienced, so much so that the ideal would be that maybe even numbers of the next level could come in and take them through what was necessary to actually have almost a mass movement into being prepared to graduate from the garden. That would be the ideal. That would be what could be the best thing, is for the garden not to have, for this civilization, not to have another age, not to have another new age, or and then it'd be ready to start at zero again and be replanted. Can you understand all that? Now that would be the ideal. And it may be somewhere in between there. Who knows? But we're trying to do our very best. We want you to try to do your very best for what we're depositing to be as close to that as we can possibly get, so that people will hope to see the benefits of changed conduct and of looking at life from a different perspective, rather than just being victims of the indulgences that exist, so much so that they just run right through one lifetime after another as fast as they can run through it, indulging in anything and everything they can to see how fast I can run the tape. You know, get me to the grave on time. You know. So.
Now, when this vehicle was in Brownsville, that really delightful resort that I stayed at for a while.
That was the worst jail in the continental United States.
I don't know. Houston was pretty bad.
Maybe.
But anyway.
That was like a Mexican jail. Brownsville was.
Well, that's true. They all spoke foreign languages. But anyway, the females that were with me didn't know how to handle anything. They only knew one thing, and that was to fight or to argue. And one night I was awakened. The place had 2 stories, and I was up by myself up into a corner. And one night I was awakened by all this studied Spanish and English and everything all mixed up, and sailor talk and going on downstairs. So I went downstairs, and these 2 girls were fighting and arguing over a cot. Who was going to sleep in that particular cot? When there were a lot of vacant ones, you know, but they all wanted, those 2 wanted that one particular cot. And so everybody else had gotten into it, except me. And so I went down there to see what was going on. And so I sat there and just listened to them for a while, and finally I said, "Hold it." I said, "Here it is, 2:00 in the morning, and I'm tired. Now you all sit down and let's talk about it." I mean, when I said, "Hold it," they all stopped what they were doing. Now, it was very easy to talk to them. But I had to take on the role. Somebody had to step in to stop them. So I sat them all down. There were about 8 of them. They all sat down, and I said, "Now, what is your problem?" And she said, "Well, there's going to be something." And I said, "Speak English. Can't talk Spanish." And so she started talking and telling me what the problem was. And so we went all down the line, and I said, and each one told me what their problem was. And I said, now, does it make a bit of sense to yell at the top of your voice, fighting, cussing, just making everybody all upset over a single cot? And in other words, they had never thought about it in that way. Their first response was that. And well, anyway, we talked for about an hour and worked it out. And but I had to go threaten to get the matron 2 or 3 times before they would stop arguing, you know. But they needed somebody that would go in there and force them to listen without being authority, a person like a policeman or something. Oh, they'd behave if the guard would come in there. But the point I'm getting at is those little gals were streaked. They didn't know anything but the wrong side of the law. But yet inside of them, they knew that they wanted something more than what they had. But they didn't